Thank you. That was Ben, who's sitting in for our two star pianists this morning, and thank you very much for coming. Ben Naylor. Well, this is the day that has long been devoted to mothers. We have a special reason to focus on mothers now. The war in Ukraine has brought about an unprecedented emergency for people in that time of life when women devote themselves to the children. Of the 2 million refugees now in Poland alone, about 1 million of them are little kids, and the rest are mothers. So there are millions that are now helpless refugees in countries not their own. Other thousands have lost their lives, and some have had to endure the tragedy of seeing their own offspring die needlessly. Most of us can't imagine what this has been like for those women, or for the men who were forced to say goodbye to them at railway stations or hastily improvised graves. We cannot imagine, but we can promise to keep watch. That is what we can do, to remember and to refuse to forget. On this morning, when springtime is promising, but not quite delivering, a bright new time for us all, let us light our flame for all the mothers caught in this latest bout of world madness, this thing that haunts the human race and never seems to go away, the idea that you can kill people and get your will. And let's not forget their children, and let's not forget the men that they left behind. Let their condition now be a continual presence for us. Stay with us in all we do together. But this isn't just a sad day. This is a happy day. So let's be happy and sing number 33 in the Purple Book, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Rejoice and come in. Enter, rejoice and come in. It will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. A long time ago, let me tell you how long, it happened the same year that this church was open for worship. In 1870, a Unitarian woman, American, named Julia Ward Howe, you may know her name. She was the person who wrote that battle hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And she wrote and issued a Mother's Day proclamation. And I'm going to read it to you. I've read it before. It has particular meaning now. At least I think it does. This is the women's view of the struggles that are going on, this war that's going on. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have taught them of charity, of mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of counsel. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each bearing after his own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a general Congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects, to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace. That was 152 years ago. Maybe we're still not listening. Yeah? Lol, do you have something nice to say about your mom? I hope so.
Hello, everybody. Mike, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fiona. Thank you. You know, people often ask me how I remember all the words to my songs, because I very rarely need a prompt to remember the words. And I always tell them that when I first started learning songs, I used to write them all down physically. I don't do it now, but I did then, and it did help the process. And I would then sing the song looking at the words on the prompt 4 or 5 times, and as long as I could remember the first word of the next line, the words would come along. It was just a kind of training, really, I realised that. So anyway, when I was a student, I had this song going round my head, couldn't get rid of it, and I thought, you know what, I wonder if my mum knows this song. It's an old one. And so I rang her up. And I said, hey, Mum, you know that song that goes do-do-do-do-do-do? And she said, yeah. Do you remember the words? She remembered all the words from her childhood, from her teenage years. So she sang the song to me over the phone. I was in Stafford, she was in Birmingham. And I was saying, slow down, slow down. I wrote them all down. And that's how I learned this song, which I'll play now, with a bit of luck. Heart and soul, I fell in love with you. Heart and soul, the way a fool can do. Gladly, that night you held me tight, there in that moonlit night. Heart and soul, I long to be adored. Lost control, I just tumbled overboard. Madly, that first sweet night we kissed, there in that moonlit mist. Oh, but your kiss was thrilling, it was so thrilling. Never before had I felt quite so willing. Now I know what one embrace can do. Look at me, it's got me loving you badly, the way a fool can do when they're in love with you. And now I know why you're the only one who knows why I am such a lonely one. So catch me before I fall too far, beloved Meher, Meher Baba.
How's everyone feeling? You can gesture with a smile. You can give me a thumbs down, a thumbs up. You give me a so-so. Let's resolve for a few minutes now to feel good. Let's resolve to feel excited, or as the song said, willing to do what we may have actually come here to do. So take a deep breath and feel at home on this day when we seek the memory of the days of our mothers and of our time with them. If they still live, we celebrate. If they have passed, we honor them. Feelings surge and ebb within us of this idea, feelings both bitter and sweet. But it's all right. It's the pulse of our being, the very tide of life. We are mothers, we are fathers, and we are children still. And in this mystery, there is healing. an answer to a question that may lie unasked within us, locked in the archives of the human heart. We feel that there's some truth here that awaits us that we cannot quite understand. So then let us merely accept, trusting like that very child we find within, and lie still in the nurturance of our prayer. For our mothers, living or dead, for this most central relationship, the very archetype of all relationship, we are grateful. If there is discomfort, if there is inner struggle, if there are things left unsaid or undone, we accept this too. For mothers everywhere wearing the emblem of unconditional caring, we open our hearts. For mothers in Ukraine and in shelters in Poland, in Syria and in Yemen, in prisons and refugee camps and detention centers, we send our concern and our affirmation. For the mothers of saints and the mothers of monsters, we find blessing. And now we urge our hearts to reach out to them as we go together once again into that place from which all meaning springs, the good silence. To that nameless one who is our true mother and true father, heart of our true hearts, we give ourselves as children today. Let our minds be free of dead thoughts, our hearts open and youthful, and our spirits, let them reflect the bright promise of this season of faithfulness. And we say, so be it. Inshallah. Shalom. Amen. Let's sing number 14 in the Purple Book, and don't forget there are 2 verses under the music. So there are a total of 6 verses in all. Bring many names. When I was a kid and growing up in Jacksonville, Florida, went to a big Presbyterian church, and on Mother's Day, because we didn't have Mothering Sunday, we call it Mother's Day, everybody had to turn up wearing a carnation. Well, they gave carnations at the door. And they'd ask you a question, is your mother living? I was standing next to my mother, and she said yes. And so they would put a red carnation in your lapel. If you said no, they put a white one. So I can remember as a kid looking around and seeing some fairly young people that had white carnations and wondering, God, I wonder what happened to that one, and so on. I'm glad we don't do that, aren't you? Yeah? Well, who is that anyway? You open your eyes for the very first time ever, and there she is. Your birth mother, the most important thing outside yourself in the whole world. The relationship is much more than close. It's actually a sense of sameness. You can't know where you end and she begins. The sounds made by your brand new mouth give her a name, Ma. The sound of sucking, the source of life-giving milk. And if she should leave the room, even for a moment, you will scream in existential terror because half of yourself is suddenly absent. And so there begins a long process of separation. In order to grow, you must claim a kind of independence. The I and I becomes the I and you. By the time of adolescence, it's become she and I. In the rough passage to adulthood, both of you must endure the pangs of difference, of alienation. Some people never make this passage successfully, remain half children in adulthood. Some make it too vigorously and experience years or maybe a lifetime of alienation. But gratefully, most of us wriggle through, retaining the image of this beloved person while being a complete grown-up in most ways. Well, maybe it's for those of us, the ones who wriggled through successfully, that this day is most special. And for that, we should, if we're able, give vent to unpolluted feelings of devotion and gratitude. But for the rest, the others, we should also spare a thought. Not everybody can fully enter into the day's celebration with unalloyed joy. Motherhood, and by that I mean parenthood in general, has had something of a rough trot over the last few decades. Once the popular notion of parenthood seemed to be the bedrock of all civilization, the biblical injunction to honor one's parent sits, after all, right next to the one about loving God. But sometime around the turn of the last century, thinkers began a process of examination of the institution of parenthood, which continues right up until now. Before this, the idea that mothers could be anything but loving was anathema. For example, for centuries, biblical scholars have been attempting to rationalize away these few lines that come from the book of Matthew, where Jesus seems to dismiss his own mother with a few curt words. Quote, "Who is my mother, and who are my brothers?" Stretching out his hands to the disciples, he says, "Whoever does the will of my Father, that is my mother." not what you'd call a family-friendly remark, is it? I mean, there's Mary waiting at the edge of the throng, wanting to see her son. It's easy to imagine her as a prototypical Jewish mother trying without success to get her eldest to take up some kind of useful job, carpentry maybe, instead of going around sleeping rough and taking up a career as an itinerant preacher. No future in that at all. Well, today the Pandora's box of psychology continues to define and interpret personality in terms of the effect of the mother, or at least the parent, on the child. There's been good value in this. The burdens of many from a condition of pain and confusion, realizations offered by practitioners, but the image of poor old sainted motherhood has plummeted as she begins to wear the blame for the world's screwed up people. The present obsession with child abuse is like that, but it's only lately that mothers, as well as fathers, are recognized to be included in that status by jurists and physicians. Before that, it was next to unheard of. The abusive father, yes. The abusive mother, rarely, if ever. It's probably true. We all have to go through disappointment and conflict with our parents if we want to attain adulthood. We can see this in our own lives. If you think about it, you'll see it in yours. There comes a period in one's life, usually adolescence, when the mother must be challenged in order for us to become free people. For most of us, the challenge is resolved, well, undramatically. Maybe there are disputes about lifestyle and partners and occupations. One overcomes one's parents gradually as we grow up, move away, get married, employed, take on parenting ourselves. What happens when this is successful is the end of the need to see mom and dad as either good or evil. To put to rest the dissension for which many of us is inevitable, and yes, even healthy. To love someone, not just in spite of the fact that they're not magical figures after all, but because they're not magical figures. They become just people whose virtues we can extol, whose faults we can forgive. The paradox comes full circle, because in order to really love someone, it's necessary to be distinct and separate from them, because love's role is to unite the disparate. So it may be that you really begin to love your parents, love them in the way that you can love once you're separate from them, once the warfare of adolescence has come to an end. Well, that realization can be of real help to those of us who find ourselves in a parental role. I've been there. Many of us have been there. In human relationships, the hardest thing of all is to allow the object of one's love and longing to be a whole, independent person by themselves. It may also be of use for those of us whose parents have died and surrounding whom we feel the weight of unfinished business and guilt and things unsaid and undone. Because the process of maturing never really finishes. It just gets deeper. So today maybe we can take some of the shine off our more sentimental memories and allow a few of the more painful ones to come up into the light. Maybe we can look at some feelings we've got and have left unresolved. And we can do this without fear, accepting that the unresolved struggle is itself the process towards realizing your true potential. By releasing one's parents, poor old mom, and learning to love them even as one frees one's self. But that's not the only reason that this could be a difficult day for some people. Because anything that has got deeply emotive roots like motherhood is bound to have this shadow side. There's a sense of bereavement experienced by those who never had children, grieving for the mother that they will never be. It might be medical reasons, it might be the loss of a child, it might be the result of decisions taken at key moments. So there is about this day the shade of bereavement and loss, or perhaps missing out. It's not easy, especially for a man, to always be aware of this. It may be hard to understand how something that never was could be lost. But that is what much of our wintry old age reflections wind up being about, isn't it? It's the second of those two sources of regret. You know the ones I mean. The things I did for which I am sorry. And the things I never did, for which I am sorrier still. Well, much of this can be understood in terms of ancient hierarchical, patriarchal structure. In the Bible, it's plain that women had one main use. They were viewed as flower pots. The seed of the father went into the flower pot, and then the woman, this pot, nurtured the creature, but the creature who came along was the seed of the father. The worst thing that can happen to you after widowhood was what it was called barrenness, an unlovely word if ever there was one, and one now rightfully confined to rubbish tip. The sense of futility that this might carry with it is a legacy of the bad old days. And it's not surprising that within the sadness of frustrated would-be parents, and there are so many queuing up at the IVF centers, there's also a fear of rejection by society. But being a mother, or being a father for that matter, doesn't come with an instruction book. While we're still trying to grow up our own selves, we're confronted with the need to oversee somebody else's progress of growth. You're still growing yourself, you're still learning yourself, and yet you're responsible for the growth of this little person that you've given birth to. By the time we know something about what we're doing, it's already too late. The mistakes have already been made and the opportunity's lost. If the family holds together, we've got a new opportunity. We can be grandparents. By then, we may know a bit more about what we're doing. So I'm going to propose right now that we start a new day called Grandma's Day. And you can bring your grandma, and you can take her out to dinner, and possibly, what do you think? A great Grandma's Day? Yeah, I'm looking at you, Pauline. Well done. You can be our first victim. So on our day of celebration and reflection, we should be aware that there are certain thorns among the roses for many of us. Maybe I am being a bit too analytical. I wouldn't put it past me. Maybe I should leave things alone and make of Mothering Sunday what the greeting card manufacturers insist, and Cadbury's. But somehow I feel that in this container of the soul that we call our religious community, that truth, even hard truth, even unpopular truth, needs to be told. That's not negative or cynical or pessimistic. It's positive and hopeful and optimistic. This day, like all days, can be one of healing. Who knows what might occur to you today? But none of that can be allowed to take away that one basic fact, the importance of that woman, that one woman, both unique and universal, that led us or sent us on our way to adulthood. Even the most difficult of mother-child relationships has a connection that is, in some sense, unbreakable. So if you're left with feelings of love and gratitude today, if all you want to do is go out and buy a cake or get up pictures of your mom and have a good old weep with some flowers, do that. If you're not, it's a time to let forgiveness guide you. Because each one of us had a mother. Everybody in this room had a mother. Everybody out there in cyber world had a mother. Just one. So today, go ahead and make those phone calls. Wait by the phone if you're expecting a phone call. Eat the chocolates. Enjoy the flowers. Give thanks for motherhood in all its forms. And do it fulsomely. Do it with gusto. But please spare a thought for those others for whom the day carries a shadow. And work as best you know how, with open eyes and hearts, to share the balm of reconciliation and forgiveness. Amen. Lovely. Ben, we got lucky when we inherited you. Thank you very much. Let's show Ben how much we appreciate his playing today. I should have checked before the service, but David, I'll check now. The memorial service for John Krask is on Saturday. So this coming Saturday, the 2nd. Yeah. I didn't know whether that's open to everybody in the congregation.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be
So it's 11 o'clock on Saturday.
11 o'clock here, and we're going to do some little refreshments afterwards, are we? So come along if you can. We all miss John. We hardly knew him. He came and then he went, but he left a mark on the congregation. It's a time to remember him that day. So please do come. There was something else really important. I think it had to do with God, the universe, and all that, or maybe the war, but I can't remember what it is. If I think of it, I'll call each of you up tonight at 3 a.m. and let you know. And congratulations if you got here at the exact time. I once got to Sidmouth, where I was part-time preacher, at 30 minutes into the service on just such a day, thinking I was there early. And you have never seen such a lot of grim countenances in your life. Because the organist especially had to play and play and play for 30 minutes while the chairman went out with his mobile phone and started screaming, "Where is that guy?" But they didn't quite sack me. Let's sing now. Let's sing familiar tune, everybody. I happen to like it a lot. I don't know if you do. Number 210. When the song of life is ringing.
Thank you.
Now you've all been given a flower. We have Pauline to thank for that. Thank you. It used to be just women, but it's not fair to do that anymore. Everybody gets one. Besides, gender is a live issue. We don't want to get in the way of that one. So let's resolve to keep in touch and get back with each other next week if we can. David, it's so good to see you back. Yeah. Right. As we have met in the presence now of mystery, let us depart in the certainty of peace. Let us go ahead and make of this season a springtide of hope and love that touches us, that touches the people we meet. Bless you and bless the mother who made you. And for this, may we look after one another as we know we can until we meet again. Amen.